In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you some winter solstice, midwinter, Yuletide folklore from this part of the world in Devon in England, as well as sharing some of the ways in which I incorporate some of these folk practices into my witchcraft practice. So get yourself a nice hot drink, settle back, relax and enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Today I'm filming on the solstice, on the winter solstice, and I watched the sunrise this morning on the English Heritage YouTube channel at Stonehenge, and it was really beautiful, and I thought I wish I'd been there actually, like all those other people. So I think that's something I'd love to do. That's always actually been on my list. I even wrote that into a magazine once, like where would you want to be at any time and place on any particular day, and that's what I said, like that's where I'd want to be. And so yeah, that is definitely something I thought today, you know, I need to make that happen maybe next year. That's something that I can do. So welcome to today's video. This is later than I wanted to film it, it's later than I wanted to put it up, and I always have this thing when I sit down and film, I'm like, bleh. And so I feel like there's stuff that needs to come out of me that is actually more wintry. So I think that I'm gonna try and save that for another video, because there's introspection, there's shadow work, there's layers to peel back, there's inner work to dive into and more to explore there. But today I wanted to come to film and offer some folkloric explorations and some traditions that I celebrate as part of my practice as a witch who celebrates both secular traditions that I was raised with, being Christmas, as well as that spiritual connection that I've always had to it, and the various figures incorporated into that in a religious sense as well, because I did have a Christian upbringing, and then my connection to it in terms of the cultural significance, the folkloric significance, and then my connection to the earth and the planet and that solstice time. And I feel like it's really a period of time that I like to soak it all in, and at certain points in my life it's been for longer times or shorter times. And I remember in my 20s when I was working in London, I would really start to feel this season creeping in when September hit, you know, and it wasn't just this season, it was also that season of the witch, that Samhain season, like together, they came together for me. And it's quite similar to something that Jasmine Ambrosio was talking about splitting the wheel up. And I don't know if I do that so much in my practice now. I think I see it like the wheel of the year almost, but I celebrate in my own ways according to what is going on around me. But in that way, I think in my 20s, it was very much like light half, dark half. Whereas now it's less divided in two, but in that time it really was. It started to get dark, and I think it was because I was out of the house a lot more and I was working really hard for hours on end, and I was in a really dark place. So as soon as the darkness hit, I needed comfort and light, and so I turned to the things that brought me that. So I remember I would begin celebrating within back then in September time, and that now as a mum that feels so early. I mean, I would never put up a Yuletide tree or anything that early. It was always later for me. Yeah, this is kind of going to be one of those videos where I just like, bleh. I recently shared a video which is hashtag 3 spirits of Yuletide, and it's really a very broad tag, sort of talking about spirits in a very loose way in all of the meanings of the word, and I look into the etymology of it, and I speak to folklore, ghost stories, and sort of Yuletide beasties and things like that. I do want to just use that hashtag again here because I feel like it's a continuation of and a more exploration into that, and I have been diving quite deeply the last few weeks into more folklore that I have maybe read before but sort of forgotten about, that's not necessarily part of my practice, or that has been brought in some way that I've kind of forgotten about, or I've been going through a number of my books, and I wanted to bring some folklore to you from this region where I'm for this time of year. Share that because I think there's so much magic in it, and I just love it. I'm definitely one of these people who just loves to like immerse myself in something. I really like focus in and research. I actually think I'd be a really good researcher, because when I was at uni, that was one of the things that I absolutely loved, and absorbing myself, and I just loved that. For my dissertation, when I did that, it was just like all in, like I loved it. But anywho, before I dive in, many of these traditions are definitely taken on in loads of different places, so it's not just specific to, but some of them will be more specific to, and others will be kind of variations of other things you'll have heard before. There's little nuances to things, such as like different sacred herbs or plants being put up or taken down at different times according to whatever the local belief or superstition was. I'm really speaking to where I am in terms of Devon folklore. In a couple of videos last year around Yule Yuletide, I shared some of the folkloric practices that I do incorporate into my practice, such as bringing in evergreens and strewing the house with evergreens, hanging evergreens, and that being a really sacred practice for me, as it has been since I was younger, because my family did. Very much a protective practice, as well as like bringing in blessings for the new year, and that is something that we see a lot like across the board at this time of year. So quite traditionally people would bring in mistletoe as well as like a blessing and to keep people safe in their home. Mistletoe is commonly brought in to the home as a blessing for kissing time around Christmas. It is also a sign that as guests come into the threshold and walk underneath the mistletoe, that they are safe and protected within the home. So it serves as a protection not only for the home but also for those within it. It was also known to the Druids to be really sacred for friendship and sort of sense of trust and camaraderie and peace. And we see this with a lot of the evergreens that are brought into the house. They are for both protective reasons as well as to bring in blessings, to in a sense sort of assert a protective and benefic field, force field around the home and the people within it. There are of course many traditions involving mistletoe and a lot of it to do with love. One that I particularly enjoy is at Christmas that maiden was to put mistletoe under her pillow and dream of her love. Many slightly different traditions for the mistletoe being hung in the house and at different times being taken down. In some places it was customary to burn it next to a Christmas pudding. In other places it was customary to hang it around the neck as real protection. In Devon it was customary to keep it until the following year, which is often something that I do with a lot of the evergreens that I have. I do hold on to them, and it was said to prevent the house from being struck by lightning. In Ottery St Mary, which is very, very close by to where I am, there was said to be a witch of Ottery St Mary. But in Ottery St Mary, keeping mistletoe was said to ensure that the house would never go hungry of bread. In certain parts of England as well, blackthorn was also burnt with the mistletoe to bring in good luck. In many places, holly was also paired with mistletoe as a decoration, although in some places it was seen as bad luck for anyone other than a man to bring it into the house, or to bring it into the house before Christmas Eve was seen as bad luck. So there was a lot of different customs varying there. Bringing holly and evergreens into the house, I think customary since around 1600, but before that we can see the origins in Saturnalia, that old Roman custom where during Christmastide the servants would get to dress in finery and be treated well and have all of the luxuries that their masters and mistresses would have throughout the rest of the year. So many resources about Saturnalia if you wanted to learn more about that. In terms of evergreens, holly and mistletoe, as I said, at various different times, it was customary in various different places for it to be burnt or not burnt. I think that most consistently it was seen that on the 12th day after Christmas would have been the customary time when decorations should have been taken down and burnt. In Somerset it was said that if they were not burnt they would turn into pixies. So you can see there's so many different customs depending on where you are, and it very much depends on the superstitions that you were raised with, especially back then. And so I think if you are working on your own practice and bringing in folklore, I think often leaning into the things that you do naturally. So for me, naturally keeping a certain element of evergreen around and then releasing it at a point that felt right for me was very much something that I've always done naturally. And so understanding that in the part of the world where I am, that there was actually folkloric belief that that could be bringing in some form of good luck is actually really validating. Many of course understand that wassailing was a popular pastime at this time of year, and in fact in this part of the world where I am in Devon it was incredibly sacred to wassail, and I'm very, very close to a place called Killerton where apples being sacred at this time of year and in the fall during the harvest season, and then at this time of year the practice of wassailing the trees, in a sense toasting to the spirit of the trees by feeding them with that said spirit. So there are many apple orchards in Devon, and I'm actually very close to one near us, Killerton, which is a National Trust property, and within it there are these beautiful orchards and they often celebrate the apple harvest with wassailing traditions. It's also done in Taunton as well as in Somerset, and essentially magical rituals would be performed and people would celebrate with the trees. They'd hang sticks to the branches of the trees to ward off evil spirits. There would most likely be fire fueled by cider, and they would toast to the fruits of the trees and to ward off evil spirits. Killerton itself is known as the Star of Devon, and wassailing is being revived as a tradition in this area. Some variations on the traditional wassailing include apple tree, I light with glee, while bell and candle wassail thee, and another, stand fast, bear well top, pray God, send us howling crop, every twig, apples big, every bough, apples enow, hats full, caps full, quarter sacks full. And in a sense, this very much mirrors the winter solstice tradition of, you know, celebrating and being grateful for what you have, and, you know, really going big with the celebrations because of what you have. And although it being a dark time, the celebration being like an encouragement to the light to come back, because in these dark times people didn't necessarily know, like, it's very easy for us to forget now in the world that we're in with the light, but it was traditionally a time when these celebrations were seen as kind of required in order to ensure the success of crops going into the new season of light. Of course, wassailing was known to be a practice at this time of year from the Anglo-Saxon wassail, meaning good health, and is thought to be a toast to health and prosperity for the year to come. Some more examples of wassailing. Old apple tree, we wassail thee and hope thou wilt bear, for the Lord doth know where we shall be till apples come another year. For to bear well and to bloom well, so merry let us be. Let every man take off his hat and shout to thee, old apple tree, we wassail thee and hope thou wilt bear hatfuls, capfuls and bushel bagfuls, and a little heap under the stairs. Another from Kingsbridge, apple tree, bear good fruit, or down with your top and up with your root, threatening the actual tree. Another variation was sung by wassailers, bemoaning the fact that they were working so hard while the farm owners stayed home, and celebrating not so much the apples as the cider which they desire from them. This was recorded in 1931 in the Western Morning News. Here come us poor wassailers a-triding in the mire, whilst master and mistress be sitting round the fire, telling of cider and what they could sell, if apples would grow, bountifully swell. Hug a lug, white bread and brown, who's the best dame in all of the town? She who taps cider, or the old-fashioned kind, and gives them poor wassailers so much as they mind. Hats full, caps full, bushel bags full, hats full, caps full, bushel bags full. Hip hip hurrah, us will pepper the trees, and bring on the apples and keep off disease. Here's to the master, a 2-gallon man, who always gets tiddly whenever he can. And there's to the mistress when mister's not in, who goes to the cupboard and brings out the gin. There is an orchard in Crediton as well, Sanford Orchards, which holds an annual wassail and keeping the tradition alive with entertainment and folk dancing and singing and mumming. Ash was also seen as a sacred plant at this time of year, and wreaths were hung in Somerset and in Devon on ash trees. It was also considered to be a blessed wood to put on your front door. Ash when green is fuel for a queen. There was also a warning that went along with that: burn ashwood sere, 'twill make a man swear. Ash was known to make the hottest and longest lasting Yule logs, and so it was a common practice for an ash Yule log to be created, and it was often called the Yule block in this part of the world, in Devon and Somerset. A similar practice was also ash faggots, or I guess twigs tied together, usually with hazel, and then lit. Often this went hand in hand with wassailing traditions as well. There is also quite significant folklore tying the ash tree in this part of the world in Devon to health and wellness for children, and being able to cure and heal maladies such as warts, etc. And so parents would take an afflicted child to an ash tree, potentially pass it through if that was possible, or hold it against the tree. There are practices such as these recorded in the 1800s, 1900s. So as I mentioned, the Yule log, folklorists referred to it as the Yule log, but it would have been referred to as the Yule block or the Yule clog in Devon, and it may have been referred to as the stock or the mock in Cornwall. This tradition was first recorded by Robert Herrick in 1620s or 1630s, calling it the Christmas log. It was portrayed as being brought to the farmhouse by cheering lads, and the farmer's wife rewarded with all the drink that they could take. The size of the Yule log would differ, of course, and in certain parts of the country it may have been large enough to have been ridden on. There is a record of that. In Somerset it was ridden by a young man who earned a reward of mulled ale and hot cakes if he avoided being thrown off it when it was dragged. As I've mentioned as well, there was also the Ashen faggot, which is a similar tradition but an alternative in Devon, and it was essentially a bundle of ash sticks that were tied with bands of bark, often hazel, willow or ash, and the largest recorded was 12 feet long, and it could be burnt on one evening only, which could be from Christmas Eve to the 12th night. These accounts were taken from around 1795 to 1806, and one could only imagine that it would have been a liquor-fueled celebration of sorts. It was very much a tradition that in the late 19th century started to disappear a little. However, in Devon it was said to continue in the 1950s, the 1960s, in pubs in Dorset, in Devon and Somerset. The burning of the Ashen faggot would be observed in Devon on Christmas Eve in farmhouses and domestic dwellings. musings. Essentially, the faggot would have been a substitute for a Yule log. The twigs would be bound with smaller branches and withies, and the mass would be dragged into the house, thrown on the fire, and the burning and snapping of each of the withies would have been a cue for a fresh round of cider, so it would have been a massive celebration. The faggot was also sometimes used for divination. In one iteration, each young person present would choose a bond securing the faggot. The chooser of the one which burned through the first would be the first to marry in the new year. In another custom, 9 withies were used to bind the faggot. Anyone who opted out of drinking every time a withy snapped would have to purchase the next drinks. Ash was also said to be the wood that would have been comprising Jesus's manger and would have been burnt at his birth, according to historical writings. In certain parts of England, it was customary on Christmas Eve to feed the cows some stolen hay that is intended to bring on a prosperous and healthy year. It was said that if wind passed through, if there was a sudden bluster or gust of wind through the hayfield, it was said to be the fairies passing through. There is also folklore around a young man sleeping on the hay in Devon and lying with his love, and then she would become pregnant as a result of lying together on the hay. I wonder what happened there. Hawthorn is a tree that is associated with both Christian and pagan lore, and it's said that in Somerset, St Joseph of Arimathea struck his staff into the turf of Wuriel Hill, where it once rooted and burst into leaf, to bloom every year on Christmas Day. In January 1753, the Gentleman's Magazine noted that a vast concourse of people attended the noted thorns on Christmas Day, new style, as in the 25th, but to their great disappointment there was no appearance of its blowing, which made them watch it narrowly the 5th of January, the Christmas Day, old style, when it blowed as usual, which to them was a clear indication that the original calendar was in fact correct. That of course has to do with the calendars being replaced in 1752, the Gregorian calendar replacing the Julian calendar in England and in North America. This was a change that was very much resisted, of course. It was recorded actually that in Devon, many folk would continue to celebrate the original days of Christmas, the old Christmas Eve, for quite a long time before gradually the 11 days were added back, and in most celebrations crept to the dates that we know of now. I found some beautiful folklore about one of my closest plant spirit allies, the rose, and this is a beautiful ritual that was followed within Devon. A girl blindfolded picked a full-blown rose on her way to church while the bells were ringing. She folded the rose in white paper, laid it away, and did not take it out until Christmas Day. It would be as fresh as the day it was picked. She pinned it to her dress and went to church. The young man she was to marry would come and take it from her. So the rose would have been gathered on midsummer and then reopened at midwinter. I thought that that was really, really beautiful. Rosemary is also of great significance for a lot of people at this time of year, and in Devon as well. William Brown of Stockley Pomeroy in Devon owned a 15th century cottage which overlooked the churchyard. Once said, "To keep ghosts out, I grow rosemary and other spirit stoppers. A rosemary bush near the doorstep purges a house of evil influences, and on the doorpost keeps thieves and witches out." Which is also something that many witches I know follow and enjoy and know to be true. I love divination charms, some of which I spoke about in the previous video, that was popular in Devon and that may have been utilised on St Luke's Eve, on Halloween, on Midsummer and on Valentine's. Was a tradition that called for 5 bay leaves, 1 pinned at each corner and the 5th in the middle of the pillow, and the person casting the charm would say the rhyme 7 times and count 7 times over each interval. "Sweet guardian angels, let me have what I most earnestly do crave, a Valentine endued with love, who will both true and constant prove." Pine needles, obviously, very, very significant at this time of year, especially if you have a real tree in your home, and pine needles under the pillow, 3 to be exact, were said to give visions and dreams of a future husband. Of course, at this time of year, many pagans and witches understand the holly and the oak king to be once again engaged in this tension between the two opposites of one having power over the other. Of course, in this period up until today, the solstice, where we see that switch over, the Holly King has had the power, and now since we have had the winter solstice, the Oak King will start to take over again. And so, as we see with a lot of these traditions, they are linked with the midsummer traditions. The midwinter traditions, the winter solstice traditions are very, very closely linked and aligned with the opposing tension of that midsummer and that summer solstice tradition. So with the oak on Midsummer's Eve, a maiden would lie down a white cloth under an oak tree, and in the morning she would find a dusting of the pollen from the blooming flowers. She put a a pinch of this magical dust under her pillow, she would dream of her true love. And this is also said to be true with Christmas Eve. Midsummer's Eve and midwinter's Eve were seen as polarities on this spectrum, and they both were said to have incredible powers for enabling plants at midnight to bloom with so much power, uncharacteristically powerfully, between this sort of point of time. And I believe it to be quite a liminal time, much like how people see Bealtaine and Samhain, and that the way that people speak about the Fae and the ghosts and spirits at that time, and that a veil is lifted. And oftentimes with that, I often feel that the veil is always slightly thin, but maybe it can be a little bit more perceptible to certain people at that time. There is folklore in Cornwall as well. I have a video about Cornish folklore, but there is folklore around the ivy and that it brings dreams of the devil. Similarly around the elder tree as well, actually. It's said that ivy can be an ill-omened plant because of its appearance in graveyards, but it also can be a great prophecy plant if you want to have prophetic dreams. And as well as being associated with Christmas time, the ivy is also associated with Samhain and All Hallows Eve, when 9 ivy leaves were gathered. Ivy was used in a love divination in Irish folklore, and 9 ivy leaves were gathered. This charm was to be spoken before retiring. 9 ivy leaves I place under my head, to dream of the living and not of the dead, to dream of the man I am going to wed, to see him tonight at the foot of my bed. And I bring that up because, again, as in my other video, I see a lot of overlap between different periods of time during the year. So the different Sabbats at Samhain, at midwinter, midsummer, and a lot of similar traditions around various plants and the powers that they were believed to possess for accessing this kind of dreamlike state and being able to divine for love. And just as in midsummer and in midwinter, it was said that holly leaves and ivy leaves could be put together as a charm to be slept upon on New Year's Eve to dream of a future spouse. And the incantation was to be spoken, "Oh, ivy green and holly red, tell me whom I should wed." And of course, during the period of Christmas time, so it's all interlinked, mistletoe, holly and ivy were utilised within prophetic divinations in the 12 days of Christmas. So I believe that many people would have been practicing these throughout the season, as well as during those other periods of time at midsummer, at All Hallows Eve. They were considered to be powerful points. And I think that it's no coincidence that similar practices with similar plant spirits were employed at different times. And I think it was a lot about desire and need, actually, for connection during those times. But I think it's really, really beautiful and definitely something you can tap into if you want to induce prophetic dreams or practice some love divination. Plant with great supernatural power, almost like a psychopomp, giving a person access to speak with the dead, to connect to the spirit realm, as well as to see into the future and to tap into that dream world, that otherworldly essence. And it was said that if this was utilised during Christmas time, that would be the purpose, to see one's true love. Onion is also a plant spirit ally that I would not have expected. However, I'm sure that most people will be using onion in their Christmas dinners or some kind of celebratory dinner at this time of year. But a common onion was used in dream divination on St. Thomas's Day, which is December 21st. A maiden would peel a red onion and stick 9 pins in it. The arrangement was formed of 8 pins in a circle around the 9th one in the middle. The one in the middle would be named after the man the woman wanted to marry. An incantation was spoken as the pins were put in. "Good St. Thomas, do me right, send me my true love tonight, in his clothes and his array, which he weareth every day, that I may see him in the face, and in my arms may him embrace." As we've discussed at length, plant spirit allies such as holly, ivy, mistletoe, rosemary, these were utilised, brought into the home for protection and for bringing in blessings. But they were also hung together and referred to as a kissing bush, which again, as we've spoken about, may have been taken down at various points. And generally they were seen in England and Wales to have been taken down on that 12th day. However, in parts of Devon it was recorded, and Ronald Hutton speaks to this, that the kissing bush would have been left up for the year in belief that it gave magical protection to the house, and that is absolutely something that I have done in my practice naturally, and I think it is probably something about where I live. I want to read this as well from Ronald Hutton. "All these cultures have been characterised principally as a means of compensation for the various deprivations of the season. It must be plain, however, that as points overlapped with another class of ritual that concerned with protecting a home from evil, so at once protecting the home, the hearth and those within it, as well as almost figuratively, I guess, physically throwing everything anything into something to celebrate with whatever people had to celebrate with. New Year was often used for divination, and there's a popular Germanic tradition for divining using molten lead poured into water, which is termed molybdenancy and taken from the Greek word molybdus, meaning lead, and there are some records that show that this may have taken place in some farmhouses in Devon as well. Another New Year's divination practice that did take place in Devon included the act of sitting under a sprig of holly with a Bible. With eyes closed, the sitter would open the Bible at a random place, of course bibliomancy, and the revealed chapter would be read aloud. The content of the chapter was said to be an indication of the year ahead. There was a tradition for Old Christmas Day, the 6th of January, to bring in good luck for the year ahead, where a farmer would shoot a robin. Another New Year's tradition in Devon was that of the first footing. All the lights in the house would be put out and the door and windows opened on the last stroke of midnight. As New Year came into being, the first person to visit the house would be an indicator of the times to follow. If they were dark, they would bring good fortune. A light hair or pale-skinned visitor would bring bad luck. Ottery St Mary was said to be a place in England where you would hear a traditional cry on Christmas morning from the town's night watchman. A bell would be rung 3 times before the cry went out. At the nativity of Christ our Lord, the angels did rejoice with one accord that Christians imitate them here on earth and spend this day with joy and pious mirth. This would be followed by the giving of the time and weather condition and any other status of the town. Also, the weather on Christmas Day and during that time was considered to have divinatory significance. However many hours of sun there were on Christmas Day was said to correlate with the amount of frosts in May. The sun shining on apple trees in Christmas Eve was said to be an indicator of good crops to come later in the year. I really believe this is down to the farming that would have been part of the lifestyle, and that back in the 19th and 20th century would have been part of everyday life. The sheep shearing often happened in May, and it was customary in Devon that part of the Christmas pudding would be kept back and served at the shearing in May, again connecting that period of winter to the spring and the new life, new growth. What's interesting and what has been recorded in points of celebration around the year around Devon and the West Country is this idea of being pixie-led. And curiously, this often aligned with celebrations that involved alcohol, and so people were believed to be pixie-led on the moors on their way home, etc. Links in with a lot of folklore of will-o'-the-wisps and the moors. I'm going to leave below links to a number of resources that I used researching and gathering information for this video in the description box below, so you can find the books yourself and do some reading. It has been so interesting regathering the information again. It's actually something that I'm really interested in and thinking about putting a full resource together. That will probably take me a long time considering life the way it is, but I've really enjoyed it and it really helps to inform my practice even further. So I hope that it's been interesting to you. You probably have already seen some of my decor and practices around the house. Now I'm going to go into filming that side of things, showing you a little bit more of the decor around our house at this time of year, share with you the altar spaces, the Yule tree and the Yule log and such. So I really hope that you enjoy. So I just want to be real. I was hoping to have everything kind of ready, but it's just not. This is the state of it. So this is actually last year's swag, and I haven't been to the woods this December because of the weather warnings we've had. We've had such storms and the trees have not been safe, sadly. So I am hoping to go tomorrow actually, and I still have work to do in this herbal apothecary that I've not done. I've been focusing on decorating this last few weeks. I have this ribbon here that I'm trying to figure out how to tie into beautiful bows to hang up, but I haven't really got the hang of tying it. I've just not gotten around to it. I wanted to share these with you. I purchased these from Lights for Fun, and they're like LED battery lights. I've got a few in the house at the moment and they're just great, and I figured that I didn't want to waste a lot of my beautiful candles at this time of year for every single meal time. So instead, imbuing these with the same intentions, but it just means that we can have them going for longer. I don't have to waste lots of my beautiful soy wax candles for the Christmas meals and all of the celebrations with family and such. Instead, we can get the same feel with these beautiful LED candles, and they're made of wax as well, so they look realistic. This is last year's swag, so I'm hoping to burn it. I want to get a fire pit for the garden and want to burn this in the new year, along with any other evergreens that are left over. The garden is looking really tired. I don't think I've showed you the guinea pigs, but we have 3 beautiful guinea pigs. I have shared pictures of them on Instagram. We've had them since the middle of the year, really. I think since about April. So yeah, longer than that now. I also invested in this lamp. It's a kind of Tiffany inspired. I feel like it's got very practical magic vibes to it. This one came and it had a faulty base, and so it's a little bit wobbly on this floor, so I complained and they sent us another one, which I have here next to the guinea pigs, and it's just nice to have a little bit of extra light at this time of year. So over here we have the tree, and I absolutely love it this year. That's just Rover in the background, our robot vacuum cleaner. So last year I shared some of the beautiful decorations. I also shared sacred herbs and spices at this time of year. I haven't got the oranges on the tree. They are actually in the herbal apothecary and they've been used in charms, and my plan was to make some more this year, but I haven't got around to it yet, so I'm hoping to do that. This is a decoration that I purchased this year, what I love, and I got this one last year for Lilith. I love these roses. I just love having the plant spirit, and this fairy is a new Graham this year. This is an old one that my mother-in-law got for us from Italy years ago, from Venice. I love these like really kitsch ones. And I found this. This is a Graham, I think, and it's a little pug, so that's for Coco. This little mouse is new this year as well. This is an old one that I purchased in my 20s. It's Kath Kidson from London. Wrapped Santa Christmas lights. So kitsch, I love it. I love these beautiful mistletoe ones. And the mushrooms, I absolutely love the mushrooms and the acorns, and these beautiful bells I got this year as well. And this partridge pear tree. Of course, you've got to have the nutcrackers, this beautiful holly. Here's one of the oranges. I love the poinsettias, Christmas rose, just lots of gold and red. And I am a sucker for a glass bauble and a poinsettia, and give me all the picks, give me all the glass baubles. I love them. This is our tree this year and I love it. At the back, so there's a garland obviously. The little birds are rose lilies from last year. This tapestry was gifted to us from my mother-in-law. It's like a tree of life. We do have a little Santa dude up here, and got my hair up there as well. And some prosperity charms. And this lovely tree was done by Gabriel. Up here I have a little bit more art from my kids as well, just some more winter trees and more mushrooms, and obviously a lot of this stays up throughout the year because I can't bear to be without it. Over here, I think I shared these with you last year. They're little reindeers, little Rudolphs that my father made. This is Graham. It used to light up, but it doesn't anymore. Mushrooms, of course. Goddess in between all of it. Lots of golden bells and some bay leaves, some roses, some massive pine cone from the woods. These are lights, fairy lights that were all tangled up, and I couldn't untangle them, and neither could my hubby, so I just popped them there just to look cute. Oh, my dad made this lovely cracker for us as well. I made this year, did like a little workshop at work during a lunch hour with someone who did paper crafts, and mine kept getting smaller and smaller because I was so bad at it. Obviously the elf on the shelf, and then Gabriel's image. I've also been putting this floral display here just to like cover up the wires. So I crafted this with a bunch of foraged items and then some other things that I purchased from the shop. I like that there, just to cover up the wires. Thank you so much for watching and being here. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been of interest. Please share below some of your folk tales, some stories that fascinate you, anything of cultural significance that you'd like to share for this time of year. I'd love to hear anything that you're doing in your practice at the moment. Also, if you'd like to do a VR to hashtag 3 Spirits of Yuletide, please do. I will leave the video linked below and in the cards so you can check out my previous video. And there's also videos from last year where I share some folklore and information about various plant spirits that you might want to work with at this time of year. I plan to be filming some reflection videos on winter, as well as my usual roundup for decks and books, etc. in the new year. So I really hope that you have a beautiful rest of the year, that you take some time to rest, really. I mean, that's what I am really going to hold close to my heart right now, especially as someone who is suffering a lot physically with chronic fatigue and chronic pain. It's been something that's been so important for me this year. I have 2 kids as well. They're 7 and 9, and I know I'm not going to have a quiet Christmas, but I'm going to try and take some time for myself and not beat myself up for things not being perfect or looking perfect or feeling perfect. I don't think they have to be. I think I'm just going to go with the flow and try my best to hold that spirit of love and compassion in my heart for myself as well as the people around me, and sending that to you as well. And thank you to those who have already filmed and shared VRs to the hashtag. It was so beautiful to watch, and honestly, like, filled my heart with such love and joy and gratitude seeing them, because the aspects that are spoken to within the videos are so powerful and profound, and really, you know, it's such a special time of year, and I'm just holding that in my heart. So deep gratitude to those of you who engaged with the tag and commented, and also to those of you who have taken time to film and share your thoughts and experiences. I'm so grateful, and I'm wishing you so much love and so many blessings and good wishes for the new year and for the rest of this year. Take some time for yourself. Sending you so much love and compassion from my heart to yours. Really sending you love. So take that with you. Solstice blessings. Have a beautiful Yuletide, and I will see you in the next video. Mwah. Many blessings. Bye.